Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is JGOD. In today's video, we're going to talk about probably one of the #1 questions I've been getting asked in the comment section on Twitter and Discord, however people can try and reach me, which is which weapons they should be leveling up, which ones are going to be meta, which ones are good, that have been integrated from the Cold War. Obviously, we know the Groza is good. We know that the MAC-10 is good. The Groza is more similar to a RAM, though, so you kind of got to play in that particular play style where you're kind of combining that with some kind of long-range option like a Kar 98K, an SPR, HDR, one of those types of options so that you can have that little bit of dynamic, but obviously that means you have to play a certain way. We're going to talk about the top 5 weapons I recommend using along with class setups to kind of get you a little bit of a head start. Obviously, we could focus on Modern Warfare weapons, but then it would just be the same weapons we've been talking about for the past 3 or 4 months, which is the Kilo, R9, MP5, maybe Grow, maybe a couple other little random weapons in there, but for the most part, the meta has been mostly unchanged, and I think with some of the subtle changes that they're making to certain attachments to Cold War and how the overall integration happened, they're going to make it so that these Cold War weapons are very competitive at some point by making the changes necessary, because at the end game, obviously they want people to buy blueprints, and you're not going to buy blueprints for weapons that just aren't fitting into the meta. So we'll kind of see how this all plays out over time. If you do enjoy the video, learn something new, please do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Heads up, this video has a sponsor segment, which we'll go ahead and go to right now. This video is actually sponsored by War Thunder, which recently passed over 34 million players, and for their 8th anniversary, they're introducing a brand new power update. And as part of the update, they're also introducing a new game engine called the Dagger 6.0 to bring combat to a whole new level of realism. And the new engine is going to allow for new global illumination features such as ray tracing for impressive lighting effects, new cloud renderer and weather effects for photorealistic skies, new effect renderer vastly improved smoke, explosion, and gun effects. The update's also going to allow you to have a revamped naval tree, which will give you access to bigger ships like the mighty battleships even earlier in the game. This is also going to kick off a new battle pass and seasonal system offering unique rewards for simply playing the game. To cap it off, they've introduced a new interface which will allow you to interact more efficiently with your hangars to inspect your aircrafts, tanks, and ships. So regardless if you checked it out in the past or you've never tried it at all, now is a good time to check out the game by clicking the link down in the description. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring the video. Welcome back. So this is, I'm going to go through them one by one, and it's going to be cut up. So basically you see the class setups to save you as much time as possible. And I want to focus on obviously the Kilo, AMAX, MP5, all these things are still the same from the previous video, which I'll go ahead and link down in the description. Nothing pretty much changed from all of that stuff if you're focusing on what the Modern Warfare weapon metas were. But I'm going to focus on the top 5 weapons that you should really be focusing on leveling up, because they do take quite a while. You're going to want to put all your effort and time into these ones because these ones are the highest priority, at least in my opinion. So the first one that we'll look at that actually fits in as being one of the most disgusting weapons currently is the DMR-14. Main reason for that is because it performs a lot like an SKS or an EBR, but it has significantly less recoil. The bullet velocity is very good. It's easy to hit shots. It has a 175 headshot damage at infinite range, and it does 55 and 60 damage to the rest of the player. So what this really means is no matter how far the player is away, it'll be 2 shots to the body, 1 shot to the head, total of 3 shots to down a player. Kind of works like the foul up close too. If you get 2 body shots and a headshot, player's down. If you get just 2 headshots, you can kill in 2 bullets at any range. So if you're very controlled about how you control your trigger, you can make sure you line up those shots if you time them up perfectly, and it's going to feel broken. And that's what happens with a lot of these Cold War weapons. They feel considerably broken because they're very strong in one aspect, and then they're kind of trash in another. This one, it just kind of fits into one of those ones. It kind of is like a FAL, SKS, and EBR all in one, but it performs very good. It just requires a little bit more skill because you got to be focused on aim, recoil control, trigger finger, but at least you got rifle ammo instead of, you know, the sniper rifle ammo that was shared with the tactical rifles or the marksman rifles with Modern Warfare weapons. So let's go ahead and look at this. The class setup I'm using is the Agency Silencer that got buffed today to match the Monolithic Suppressor. So if you want a Monolithic Suppressor, Agency Suppressor is basically the Monolithic. We got the Task Force Barrel. Initially, I thought, you know, it's not going to be a big deal. Damage, range, bullet velocity, none of that. You know, it's all good stuff there. But vertical and recoil, you know, vertical recoil and horizontal, dang, that's going to be a big knock. In actual practice, this is not as damaging as it sounds. So I highly recommend going with this one just so you get that extra bullet velocity and your shots go exactly where you want. One of the downside with this weapon versus some of the Modern Warfare one is there's not a lot of stabilization. So you got to be able to make sure that you have good centering, you snap onto the target, you pull that trigger, and you hit those shots because the idle sway will begin to kick in a little bit. Field agent grip, we have that one here for vertical and horizontal recoil. That's kind of just to offset the other one. If you wanted to go a little bit more aggro with this type of gun, you can go with the infiltrator grip because that's going to give you the movement speed, shoot movement speed, and aim walking movement speed. So it's going to help with the strafing, pretty much everything that involves getting into a gunfight and allowing you to be more mobile, but it really depends on your playstyle. So you have to adapt to that. You don't necessarily need more ammo unless you're going to be playing larger game modes. So you could always drop the grip and actually put on more ammo. The airborne elastic wrap, this is what this is going to do is give you the aim down sight, flinch resistance, and then aim while going prone. Not obviously important in this particular aspect, but flinch resistance, when you're trying to hit those shots, you don't want anyone's bullet to kick your flinch and you miss the shots and shoot them over the head. So that's why I value that one. Aim down sight, you're going to get a little bit shoot movement speed counter and sprint to fire, but you kind of have taken care of that with the other attachment if you want. If you just want to keep it simple, you can go ahead and go with the first one, which is just speed tape, and that's going to give you faster aim down sight. So it's just more simple, and it doesn't have nearly as many downsides as this one here. So you can experiment and see what feels good for you. And then I recommend, you know, if you're going to do close quarters, maybe you go with the regular reflex. If you're going for a little bit longer range, mid-range, you can go with the 2X, and if you really want to try and use this for a longer range, 3X. I don't really personally like the 4X all that much. And then this SUSAT multi-zoom is currently like bugged. They need to fix how the optic works. It just doesn't look right in game. So you can choose the optic that best suits you. So, but this one, incredibly nasty, and it's going to feel like you're cheating when you get some of these kills because you could be getting torched and then boom, 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 and the gunfight is over. And you can kill them in 2 or 3 bullets on a pretty consistent basis. Keeping in mind that if you only shoot the body, it's going to take like 5 shots to kill. So the TTK drops off pretty hard if you don't at least mix in 1 headshot in the mix. SMGs, obviously we know the MAC-10 is disgusting. One of the things that people don't realize with this gun is it does have an open bolt delay just like the Uzi. So every time you pull the trigger, there's a slight 50 millisecond delay every time you're pulling the trigger. And this is the same thing we've had with a lot of the LMGs as well as the Uzi. So this is kind of not uncommon, but that's one of the reasons why I think the weapon is built so good. If you want a suppressor, you're going to definitely have to go with the agency suppressor. If you don't care, some people are like opting to not go with the suppressors up close. You can always go with the Ranger, which is going to give you that bullet velocity, which will allow you to compete in some of those medium engagements from about 12 meters up to about 25 meters. This thing, I was getting kills at like 35 meters, people in the air like 40 meters. As long as you're able to track pretty well, this thing will beam. And this is a pretty solid class setup. If you don't care about the no stock, you could always go for the suppressor and put in the agency suppressor. So that's kind of how the class setup would look. Next up is the Groza, and right here we can see that we're using that Groza suppressor, which is essentially the same thing as the agency suppressor. We're using the composite for bullet velocity because we want these bullets to connect, and this brings this weapon pretty much in line like with the Kilo's bullet velocity and a lot of the other rifles within Modern Warfare. So you're gonna feel like you're getting a little bit more consistent bullet registration. But the way that a lot of these guns are designed, they have just a little bit too much recoil to really compete against the Kilo or the M13 or even the the M4. Kind of, if you stack it right, it's really hard for these weapons to compete at the long range. So you really don't want to deck them out to be in a competitive situation with that. So ideally you want to set this up where maybe you can actually have a little bit faster aim down sight time, which is what I'm doing here. Aim down sight time is improved with this Serpent wrap. You could go the airborne if you're trying to go ahead and get the flinch resistance as well, but I think the Serpent wrap is kind of like the happy medium. You can go for the fast mag and kind of keep this as your close round AMAX or RAM, whatever you want to see, because as we did when we talked about the damage profile, this thing is very similar to the AMAX, but obviously it can get a little bit trickier to hold the recoil at that range, which I think they're going to take care of. One of the missing attachments in the game is bullet stabilization. If we go to the Spetsnaz speed grip, Commando foregrip is what most people use in their rifles because it has stabilization and then it also has a stability. And none of these attachments have stability, which kind of messes up the balance of the game, at least in my opinion. Next up is the Krig 6, and this one I actually got to play with a little bit more. I think it's pretty viable, especially now that they kind of modified it with the bullet velocity. The bullet feels like they go where you want them to go. You definitely get the connection that you're looking for. Underbarrel, field agent grip, these are kind of all following the same pattern, just because of the way the game designs. You're trying to solve for specific issues. I think the Serpent Wrap is probably the way to go again. If you're going to use this as a closer range and stack it with if you're going to keep this for closer range, this will perform very well. The TTK is good at those closer ranges. And then if you want them a little bit further, you got to get rid of the ADS and then go ahead and go with, like a 3X optic, which will allow you to get the visibility at further range, the same way the VLK does. As we saw, you do get a hair better recoil when you actually combine it with the 3X, 4X type of thing. Even if it is just minimal. And that's the class setup I would use for this one. Then the absolute sleeper is the best non-overkill weapon in the entire game, in my opinion, and that's the Diamatti. I talked a little bit about this on Twitter. I had a chance to use this in a couple games here, and one of the most amazing things about this is when you get to level 35, that's max level, you're going to get dual wield, or aka akimbo. But what you'll notice is when you're akimbo, you're not going to aim down sight. So every attachment screws aim down sight, but then you don't really matter. Like, you don't need an airborne thing because you don't care about aim down sight. None of these are going to help at all. So zero benefit in using a rear grip. Ammunition, we're going to use a fast mag. This thing's stupid. Literally, your guns come off camera and then they come back into the field of view and they're reloaded. It's kind of one of the dumbest things that's available. Then when we go to the laser, we can go all the way over here. You just want good hip fire, you're going to go with the 5 milliwatt, and you can look. Hurts aim down sight time, which is irrelevant. It's so dumb how imbalanced this weapon is. Then we can go all the way to task force, and look at this. You get damage, range, bullet velocity, and you're going to lose out a little bit on vertical recoil and horizontal recoil, but you're not aiming down sights, so you're not going to get those negatives. Obviously, max starting ammo is more important when you're actually playing multiplayer, but when it comes to Warzone, it doesn't matter. You can hold as much ammo as you can of a secondary, so this one ends up getting that. And now you're only left with one less spot, and we can go all the way over here. We get reduced aim down sight speed, which doesn't matter. Aim walking steadiness doesn't matter. So literally we're all pros. We get damage range, bullet velocity, and sound suppression. So this all combined ends up being one of the most disgusting things because it's literally all pros. It melts instantly. It does a lot of damage. Obviously, you're better off using a primary weapon. But the reason why I want to bring this one up is because let's say you come back late game, you can only get one loadout. This will allow you to run whatever primary you want, and you could run Ghost. Or if you want to play a little bit more aggro, you can start off getting restock right off the bat. Maybe run with the kilo in this, and then you have that option to kind of play around with it. Maybe an AMAX in this, and then when you go ahead and get the second loadout, then you can swap out to something and get Ghost and restock or whatever you want. But at least this will kind of guide you, and this is competitive enough to compete with pretty much all of the close range options, with the exception of maybe the R9, which will insta-delete you. This gets pretty close, but it's not as close as the R9. So those are the ones that I would level up personally. I think there's still going to be some tuning and pass through, that these weapons are at least viable in the current state of the game. Doesn't mean they're overpowered or they are quote unquote the meta, but they are definitely viable and they are able to compete with the current weapons as long as you understand how you should be using these weapons and that they should not be your primary. You're going to really use most of these rifles like the Kilo. The only one that kind of gets close is the Krig, and that is about it. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, learn something new. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Appreciate all the support on the channel. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.